This episode of the Device Talks weekly podcast is brought to you by Device Talks Tuesdays. Join us on April 20th. Our friends at Nelson Labs will lead a discussion called The Impact of MDR on Biocompatibility. Go to devicetalks.com for more information. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Hey everyone, this is Tom Salemi. Welcome back to the Device Talks weekly podcast, or if you're a first-time listener, welcome. We've got a full episode for you today. We'll be speaking with Lisa Earnhardt of Abbott. I've known Lisa for a good long time. Knew her back when she was CEO of Intersect. So it was great to catch up with her today to learn what she's doing at Abbott, what Abbott is working on, and how it has endured the past 12 months. Abbott's diagnostics, of course, have been one of those COVID-19 heroes, and Abbott's medical device group has pushed through as well, and we'll hear all about that from Lisa, including some changes they made to make their products more lockdown friendly, or at least to prepare for connectivity challenges going forward. Before we talk with her, we're going to introduce a new approach here at the Device Talks weekly podcast. We're going to drill down on one of our news items of the week. The news being that the FTC is moving to block Illumina's acquisition of Grail. We'll speak with Christopher Keir, the Vice President of Medical Affairs at Grail. I actually spoke with him 2 weeks ago before this news came out. So I was looking more then to do a deeper dive on what Grail is hoping to achieve. But the news this week has allowed us to expand that discussion. And we will bring in a conversation I had this morning, Friday morning, with Vijay Kumar of Evercore ISI. He's a senior managing director there. He covers Illumina, and we'll talk about what the FTC said, what it means, and what is the likely outcome of this challenge to Illumina's acquisition of Grail. But before we get into all of that, it's my distinct pleasure to bring in Chris Newmarker, executive editor of Life Sciences at Mass Device. Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Tom. Doing well.
I got some gripes, Chris.
What, man?
So just to revisit very quickly the whole vaccine situation that we covered last year.
I'm getting vaccinated on Monday, man. How are things going in Massachusetts? How's that?
So I read in the Globe this morning. It was buried in the article too that they're gonna drop it down to 55 plus next week.
Oh, that's nice.
It is, but Gen Xers, the oldest Gen Xers are 55. So once again, the boomers are just trying to screw Gen X. Gen X, the forgotten generation.
Just forgotten, man. Yeah, I know. It's like I'm gonna get out my old Pearl Jam T-shirt.
I thought we'd go with Breakfast Club, but if you're one of the younger Gen Xers, so I guess that would be your go-to. I'm more of a John Hughes Gen Xer. So
you're gonna be. Are you just gonna go outside of a CVS with like a trench coat and hold a boombox over your head?
I'm gonna play the song again, and this damn Peter Gabriel song again and again. Give me my damn vaccine. That's a strategy, Chris Newmarker. I think I might do that.
You'll get there, man. You'll get there. Don't worry.
Everyone who's had a vaccine is like, oh, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. But then they get the vaccine and they're on social media like, woohoo, I'm vaccinated. So don't tell me it's not a big deal, people. Don't tell me it's not a big deal.
No, not worrying about seriously getting ill is a big deal.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not going out aside until I get my vaccination. I'm not going to be that guy who gets shot 2 hours after the peace treaty is signed. No, sir. I'm keeping my head down.
It's not going to be the end of All Quiet on the Western Front. It was just minutes away. I'm like, why?
Exactly.
All right.
My next gripe, Chris, and it's not a gripe as much as
you're griping enough. You should be old enough to get the vaccine.
This weekend is the Godzilla versus King Kong release, or at least it was released this week, and I'm prepared to watch it, but I never got it. I mean, Godzilla, how could he not have just kicked King Kong's butt? It's ridiculous. He's much larger in all the other movies, and he shoots fire. And King Kong is like just a walking brisket, basically. He's just made of fur. How does that not catch fire?
But I mean, Kong is like a primate. He's like closely related to us, human beings. Come on, we got.
I'm biased in favor of Godzilla.
Yeah,
Huge Godzilla fan. So.
I mean, Godzilla is cool. I mean, it's
Cue the Godzilla song. All right. That's my other gripe, but vaccine would be number one. Godzilla versus King Kong would be a distant number two.
Since you're griping, Tom, I mean, do you have any opinions on the dropout?
Oh, well, is that in the Newmarker's Newsmakers this week?
It is not.
Do you need to bring people up to speed on what the dropout is?
The fact that there's a series on Hulu about Elizabeth Holmes, but is there just too much of this? Or
we'll see, won't we?
I mean, the trial isn't even over yet, and they're already doing a TV series about it.
They're making more TV shows than we can certainly swing a stick at, and it's certainly a compelling story. I just hope John Kerry is getting some sort of producer credit. So
there you go.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly deserves it. He broke the story. He should reap the benefits. So if he's not part of this production, then I think he has a follow-up book that he can do. All right. Well, enough of my griping. Chris Newmark, you have an abundance of great stories for this week's Newmarker's Newsmakers. Let's start at number 5.
All right. Number 5 on the list, we've got Illumina postponing its $8 billion acquisition of Grail until after September 20th. And this is because the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is challenging the deal in federal court, saying that this is going to kind of get rid of competition in the early cancer detection test markets. So, there's been some talk that we'd be seeing like more antitrust actions in the new administration. And here we go.
All right, now it's time for our Device Talks deep dive. Let's hear from Chris Keir. Chris is the Vice President of Medical Affairs at Grail. And then we'll follow up with a conversation I had with Vijay Kumar of Evercore ISI. Let's listen. Chris Keir, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's going to be great to get an update on Grail. It was definitely one of those exciting stories that keeps getting better. But I just wanted to find out a bit about yourself. You're relatively new to the company, having joined last year. So take us a bit into your background. Where did you start off and how did you find your way into Grail?
Certainly. I am a hematologist oncologist, and I joined the company back in May of 2020. Before that, I ran medical affairs for Novartis, and there I worked on the CAR T-cell program. Mm-hmm. So that was an extremely innovative change for how we treat leukemias and lymphomas moving forward. And I had the chance to bring that globally from a global market standpoint. And so Grail was the logical next step for me in terms of what could be innovative and could really be a paradigm shift and a game changer.
How does your perspective change? You're going from a company that was developing treatments for cancer to one that's hoping to make those treatments more effective by diagnosing the disease earlier. Is it a different mindset or a different approach, or does it feel very familiar to you?
Yeah, no, it's a completely different mindset. Multi-cancer early detection, and that's what Gallery, the test that Grail is going to be providing, sets out to do. So if you think about now, we have a couple of cancers, about 4, that the USPSTF validates for regular screening, and that's considered standard of care, depending on the demographics that you fall within. The goal of Gallery is really to be able to screen and detect cancers earlier so we can intervene and change the morbidity and mortality. We're not screening for individual cancers. We're screening for 50 plus cancers by doing a simple blood draw. So I think that in itself is the game changer, to be able to use a blood test, just like you get a blood test to check your cholesterol, to be able to screen for such a wide range of cancers.
And is the intention that ultimately the test will be administered at that same point for a routine physical examination, or is it typically going to require some sort of a symptom or concern that leads to the blood test to confirm or not confirm a diagnosis?
The way Gallery is designed now is that it would be for people who are asymptomatic. So again, just like when you go get your cholesterol checked, you would go get this blood test to see if there was a cancer signal in your blood. So that's how we're positioning this as we move forward. And, this really will be at the front lines. So this isn't necessarily a tool for an oncologist, but for a primary care physician. So we would be able to catch things earlier with the whole goal of being able to have patients who have earlier stage cancers where we can intervene and really make a difference on.
I know you've announced some news this year that has put you in a position to get those tests out to people. Let's take them one at a time and share as much as you're comfortable sharing. But you announced last month the arrangement with Quest Laboratories to work with them. What is that relationship? What will that do for Grail and for the Gallery tests?
This is a simple blood draw, right? We need to be able to have phlebotomists and to be able to procure the blood from the patients and then send it to our laboratories that are based in California and one in North Carolina. So the ability to facilitate that using Quest, which is such a world-renowned laboratory phlebotomy service, is a fantastic step for us to bring this screening modality to a broader population.
So does Quest process the tests for you, or is it more of a distribution path to get it into the hands of the primary care and to get it into those healthcare channels?
Yeah, it's more of a distribution because everything's actually processed in our laboratories, either in Menlo Park or in the Research Triangle Park.
You've been working in the oncology industry for a long time. What is the appetite like for tests like this? Obviously, you heard the numbers, and we all want to have earlier diagnosis, but I'm wondering what the acceptance level is of physicians and of patients. Is this something that people are skeptical of, excited about, need education on? How would you characterize that?
With any new paradigm shift, there will be people who need more information. And that's really our goal, and our job is to educate people on exactly what this test can do. As I mentioned before, it's a blood draw. We screen for over 50 different types of cancer. I think what's important for people to appreciate is that this blood draw, the specificity is 99.3%, and the false positive rate for this screening modality is 0.7%. These are extremely important numbers when you think about how you're going to screen an entire population. So the big idea is for us really to be able to pick up these cancers early and then act upon them and intervene to reduce morbidity and mortality. So the numbers that we have published in the Annals of Oncology are extremely exciting. I think that's why there is a lens across the United States about what this could do for patients and for populations as a whole.
Yeah, help us dig into those numbers a bit more. Just looking at your information or the company's information, you state that approximately 71% of all cancer deaths are attributed to cancers currently lacking available screening tests. And that just by your modeling, it says early detection with Galleria could reduce late cancer diagnosis by more than half, resulting in a 39% reduction of 5-year cancer deaths. Those are amazing numbers. How will that be represented going forward in terms of these numbers? They're large percentages. Is this something that takes time to develop? Is this an impact that we may see immediately as to, depending upon how many tests are done, of course? What does this look like going forward?
That's the exciting part about how this is being adopted in the United States. And I don't know if you saw the news, but we have partnered with the NHS in the United Kingdom to do a large trial there. So 165,000 patients as it stands right now to be able to ascertain their data and their responses to the test. In the United States, we are going to be opening in the next month or so a registry for patients who opt in to once they have the Grail test, so we can follow them from a larger stance as well. So this is the really exciting part, is that this real world evidence is going to be coming in real time as we move forward this year and next year and in the future. So that data will be extremely exciting to look at because, we do suggest that we'll be able to catch cancers earlier. And so the stage shift to be able to do that is what's so exciting, I think, for epidemiologists and oncologists and physicians and patients, frankly.
And how many cancers are you going to be able to test for? Again, looking at your background, or I see you have information on breast, cervical, lung, and bronchus, colorectal, and prostate. I don't know if those are just data points to represent the larger cancer picture, or Are these all cancers that you're going to be testing for?
Yeah, so all of those, but it's 50 plus cancers that we currently screen for in our tests, in our clinical trials, and what we will be screening for when we become commercial in the next several weeks.
So in the case of, say, colorectal or prostate, does your test supersede the need for some of the testing that's gone on There, I guess I'm thinking more of colonoscopies. I know you're looking more than for cancer with that. You're looking for the polyps, but does this make those other kind of tests unnecessary, or does this complement those tests?
Yeah, this is certainly, it's a great point. This is not here to replace the current USPSTF screening guidelines. This is complementary in terms of what we pick up. But the beauty of this is that, again, there are only 4 really USPSTF recommended tests, right? So 45 plus other cancers are what this blood test is also picking up alongside the current standard of care. But I want to be clear that we're not here to replace the current standard of care screening guidelines. This is used as a complement.
Sure. No, more is always better. And your other bit of big news is your arrangement with the Providence Health System, which is obviously one of the larger health systems, and I think one of the more innovatives in terms of adopting new technologies and encouraging innovation. What does that arrangement allow for?
So we're very excited about our partnership with Providence as we move forward. And you're right, this is a very innovative treatment. Providence is an innovative healthcare system. And I think they recognize the beauty of what this test could provide moving forward. So we will be rolling it out in Providence centers, and we look forward to future partnerships with them from a research standpoint, but also from the commercial standpoint, and being able to provide the screening test to as many people as possible.
And do you see this as a situation where they're making it available again for these to their primary care networks, I imagine, for annual exams that we all undergo? Is it going to get to that level immediately, or is that something that you need to sort of build toward over time?
Yeah, I think it will be a gradual process of the availability as we move forward.
Okay, great. And finally, just to give us a sense of the commercial rollout. I believe you were slated to be making this available in the second quarter. So I guess we're almost there.
Yeah, we're almost there. This is what's so exciting as an oncologist to watch this come to fruition. So it's an LDT, a laboratory developed test. We do have breakthrough device designation. This will be available in the next several weeks. So we're very excited to bring this to the United States and the world as we move forward, hopefully.
So as we come up closer to the commercialization, can you just walk us through the pathway? Is this an FDA approved test, or is this going to be a lab developed test path?
So we'll be introducing Gallery as a laboratory developed test. The lingo is in LDT in this community. We do have FDA breakthrough device designation, and we're in talks with the FDA, and we will be submitting for FDA approval as we move forward. Again, we think that what this test can do is quite impressive from the data that we've shared thus far. So we have decided to go the LDT route now to bring this to the public as quickly as possible.
And does that limit you in any way as to how you can get this to patients and physicians?
No, it's still done it's a CLIA certified approved test. Many tests that people get today when they go get their blood drawn falls under the umbrella of an LDT.
And just final question for you. I mean, you mentioned it earlier as an oncologist. This must be an exciting project to work on. What do you speak to that excitement again? And what do you see the next 3 to 5 years looking like for these sort of tests that are coming out? It seems like a real exciting time.
We've had so many amazing advances in our therapeutics and how we treat cancer patients, but cancer is still going to kill about 600,000 people in the US. And so all of the things that we've done, there's still so much more work that we have to do. And as an oncologist and being married to an oncologist, we recognize that if you can catch cancer earlier, then you can intervene in the arc of the patient and hopefully help prevent the morbidity and mortality that is ultimately associated with the cancer diagnosis. So to me, being able to screen for things that we can't and historically haven't been able to look for, and then intervene, I think that's what's so exciting as we move forward. And really, that's the impetus for me to have come to Grail in the first place.
It's exciting news. I look forward to tracking the rollout and hopefully taking one of these tests in a future examination. Keir, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us, Chris. Now we're going to hear from Vijay Kumar of Evercore. I spoke with him Friday morning about the FTC's decision to challenge Illumina's acquisition of Grail. Let's listen. Well, Vijay Kumar, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me on, Tom. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I know it's a busy week, and I want to talk to you, though, about Illumina, which I'm sure is taking up a lot of your time, the FTC's decision to basically block the Illumina Grail deal. It's interesting on a lot of different levels. Number one question, did you see this coming, or was this a surprise?
No, this was a surprise. It's interesting because typically you look at market share concentration, and a lot of that depends on how you define these end markets. And when you think about these early cancer detection, it was a little surprising to us.
Let's just get into it. I mean, what's also intriguing about it is that Illumina founded Grail. I mean, it owns about 10% or 12% of the company. So it basically spun it out and then tried to bring it back in and is being blocked from doing that. That's sort of an interesting, I think, dynamic. Does this, in the future, do you see companies not spinning things out because they might not be able to bring it back in as a result of this?
No, I'm not sure we can make a broad conclusion. I know the surface, the details appear that way.
Yeah.
But I think reading through the FTC complaint, it's a pretty well-crafted complaint. And I think the FTC found the set of circumstances here unique. I mean, they're thinking about the longer term, 10, 20, 30 years out. Would this ultimately benefit or harm consumers? So it's a slightly different approach that they took, which is fascinating.
So let's speak then to that. I mean, what does this suggest for the future? I mean, you've got a company with a cutting edge technology that's promising to develop a new market, a new industry, new series of tests. I don't know how you can forecast that if this company is acquired by an Illumina or any strategic buyer, that it's going to have a hold on that technology and industry, because there are other companies out there. We last time you were on, we talked about Thrive. There are other tests being developed. So what does this say for sort of the future of acquisitions of real cutting edge technologies like this one?
So I don't think positions of cutting edge companies that tapers by any means. I do think this is very specific, unique to Illumina. The facts of the case are, if you go through the FTC complaint, it's very logically constructed. The FTC's claim is, look, finding cancers early, this could be a big deal for a game changer for consumers, right? 80% of cancers are detected late stage. This could be one of the biggest innovations, equivalent to IO drugs, even oncology drugs, right? In terms of how game changing it could be, changing the survival curve. And now to do that, any other existing methods like PCR, tissue biopsy, those are not viable. The FTC also looked at other companies and technologies. They looked at Thermo Fisher. They looked at long-read technologies like Pacific Biosciences, and they came to the conclusion Illumina's tech is the only way to do it. Sequencing is the only way to look at or evaluate early stage cancers. You're trying to find DNA in the blood. And the only viable technology is Illumina. So the conclusion, this is a critical component for test developers. Now you are right. There are a lot of test developers. You have Thrive, you have Freenome. Well, Thrive will be part of Exact. You have Freenome, Guardant Health, and you have a whole range of small companies coming in. The FTC's concern is if I'm a test developer, I need to work really closely with Illumina during the early stages of developing the test. I need to validate my assay, chemistry, design specific probes, perhaps looking at specific regions, etc. You'll need a lot of technical support. Now, the FTC's concern is by having that early look at what kind of competition could enter in the Illumina, the incentives for Illumina could be to thwart upcoming competition if there's anything to kill them. And so it's a very nuanced argument. They're not really talking about the current state of affairs. They're really talking about how this whole equation changes motives, right, for future test developers. And I think there is some validity to that thesis, that argument, because what we know about early stage cancer is we still don't know what kind of method or technology works. We know sequencing will be a big part of it, but there could be other multi-omics approach. We don't know which approach is going to win. So you'll have a lot of companies trying to come in. It also depends on what kinds of areas you're looking, what kinds of algorithms you're trying to develop. So there will be a lot of companies coming into this market, and Illumina has an incentive here by owning Grail to perhaps be discriminate upcoming competition.
So because Illumina is sort of the gold standard that's going to be used, the platform that would be used to advance further innovation, the FTC is saying that they're not allowed or should not have basically a horse in this race.
Correct, because of the incentives it raises, right? If you really think early cancer detection is a $20, $30, $40 billion market, right? You have a variety of estimates out there. They're all in the tens of billions. Then Illumina has a lot of incentives, even at the risk of losing some business on the instrument reagent side. You're protecting your moat around early cancer detection. That's a larger piece.
Fascinating. And just finally, you wrote up a few notes this week. You held a webinar on it, but one of your conclusions was that while Illumina, and maybe you can speak to how they're going to challenge this, they are going to challenge it, but you seem to think that they're going to have a steep hill to climb.
In reading that FTC complaint, this is a high science. I mean, to be honest, it's the specialists in the field probably understand some of the nuances. The amount of resources, efforts that the FTC has put in to understand what's happening, it was pretty deep. So it feels like the FTC is really well prepared to make their case and block the transaction. Now, from Illumina's perspective, they've gone down this path. It's very hard for them to go back now. And so it now becomes a question of how much time and resources are Illumina and Grail willing to put into this effort, right? If this goes to court, it becomes, no one knows what the outcome could be. Cancer is, it has an emotional component to it. You never know how people could react when the case is argued in a court. So I don't think it's a straight shot. Like the headline statistics, when you look at historical precedents, FTC, DOJ challenges to vertical mergers, they're not that successful. 90% of these deals usually go through. And so the headlines would suggest, look, Illumina Grail will go through. But the way the FTC has approached it and they're crafting their arguments, this does not seem to be straightforward. There's a real risk of this landing up in the courts. And
just the final question, I do wonder if Illumina hadn't spun out the technology and instead had developed it internally. I mean, would this have been something would they have been targeted for FTC seeking a breakup of some kind at some point? Or I guess it's hard to speculate, but it's just an interesting turn of events. Yeah, for sure. And that's a great question. And the honest answer is I don't know, because someone would have had to bring this up back to the FTC. Usually the FTC gets involved when there is a deal. That's when they'll look at the transactions closely. If this was organic in-house, I don't know. Unless someone complained to the FTC, it'll be hard for them to look at it. I guess the one analogy would be what's happening with the big tech, right? Mm-hmm. But then to go down that path, you need to believe that these tests are extremely successful. So it's hard to argue before these tests are launched. So you're right. I think if Grail was part of, I think that they would have had a better chance of launching this test. I know you have a busy day. I appreciate your taking the time and joining us on the podcast. Thanks for having me on, Tom. Take care. All right, and we're back. Chris Newmarker, what is number 4 on your remarkable Newsmakers list?
Hey, number 4 is from our associate editor, Sean Hooley, who just man, that guy is like a writing machine. But he did a really well-reported story on how 5G could affect medtech. I mean, you got wireless tech companies such as Qualcomm, saying that, this could be like download speeds as high as 10 gigabytes per second, when this rolls out eventually worldwide. Kind of like the experts at companies, including like Philips and Medtronic, kind of singled, it's going to take time to see what this is going to do for medtech. I mean, it definitely seems my experience with the industry is that we're definitely not a super fast adopter of new stuff.
You think?
But I. It was interesting that, there's a whole section of the story talking about telerobotics, and that that seems like a no-brainer. Like, super fast communications would definitely help, having a robot operate on somebody remotely, with a surgeon in another part of the world potentially. But he also mentioned that he also had experts talking about how 5G could even help out with kind of this this goal in the diabetes space of having automated insulin delivery. Like, you have much faster communications than you could possibly spot problems faster and and kind of get even more things automated for people with diabetes even. So I mean, a lot of potential things that could happen. So it'll be neat to see what kind of innovations enabled by 5G in coming years.
Absolutely. My two takeaways is, number one, I agree with you entirely. It's going to be a fascinating sector to continue to cover in upcoming years. And my takeaway number two is that Sean Hooley's parents are probably going to be eligible for the vaccine next week. So good for them. I'm happy for them.
Are you sure Sean's parents aren't younger than you, Tom?
That's mean, Chris. You're a bad medtech editor.
I know.
Let's roll on to number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list.
I feel guilty already, Tom.
I asked for it. I can take it. I can dish it out, and gosh darn it, I can take it.
All right, number 3 on the list. We've got Zimmer Biomet launching a new suite of digital and robotic technologies. It's the ZB Edge Connected Intelligence Suite, and this includes like everything from their Rosa robotic surgery systems, anatomical visualization and guidance systems such as Signature One, to their iAssist knee alignment system. So it just seems like Zimmer Biomet just really they're bundling everything. They're doing a good packaging of all the stuff they're trying to do around the digitization of orthopedic surgery, and it's a very hot space, tons of competition. I mean, basically every major company in the space, Stryker, Zimmer Biomet, DePuy, Smith and Nephew. I mean, they're all trying to put all these digital tools in ortho surgery, getting robots involved, and even like Zimmer too, like we're expecting them to release a smart knee implant, later this year. That was a good scoop that we had on our sites in recent months, and that's also on the cover of our latest print edition of Medical Design Outsourcing.
All right, Chris Newmarker, bring us home. What is number 2 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list?
All right, number 2, we've got Medtronic veteran Brooke Story is leaving to run BD's integrated diagnostic solutions business. So this is just another example of an executive at Medtronic leaving to run something elsewhere. I was joking on LinkedIn recently, we're going to have future MedTech executive conferences. They're going to feel like Medtronic alumni gatherings. They can all show their mission statement medals, and complain about winter weather in Minnesota and all that stuff. It'll be great. All
right. Well, Chef Martha did address this whole issue when we talked to him last about how Medtronic seems to be a feeder system for other medtechs, and he acknowledges that it's sort of a role of a company to develop great talent, and when you develop great talent, they can find better opportunities someplace else. So he wants Medtronic to be a talent factory, but still, I'm sure they're not happy losing someone like Brooke Story.
Yeah, but still, just a really good sign of the caliber of executives that they have around there. That they're obviously really developing a good leadership culture, and it's those leaders are also moving out and spreading some of those ideas to other companies. So yeah, very very cool, and kind of similar to what happened in the past. I know Martha mentioned that too. That in the past, GE Healthcare, you had a lot of executives from GE who ended up at all kinds of different companies in the industry. So it's kind of a pattern you can see sometimes.
Great point. Yeah, it's something we'll continue to follow for sure. All right, Chris, what is the big number 1?
Well, number 1 on the list is Abbott's announcement that it's speedy Binax Now COVID-19 test that you can, use on yourself. It's, similar in a lot of ways to a pregnancy test. It's over the counter now. And, because of, Abbott's relationships with all these big giant retailers, I mean, this thing is expected to roll out across the country, and they're saying this thing's going to be affordable too. It's going to be, priced like other common over-the-counter tests. So there won't be sticker shock when you find the box in a store. There were actually a number of of over-the-counter approvals of these types of tests this week, but definitely Abbott's test sticks out just because they're saying just because of like the amount that this could be rolled out and the affordability, and I guess the pandemic, we're hopefully really going to tackle this thing this year. We got the vaccines rolling out, but we still need a heck of a lot of testing, and we're going to need screening tests, and this is just appears to be more good news that it's just going to become something else that's just going to make things easier for us as we hopefully drag our way out of this pandemic this year and get back to normal. And I wouldn't be surprised if my wife and I are going to a music show later this year and there's a stack of tests like that at the doorway and you got to take something before you get in. So we'll see what happens.
And Chris, is Abbott the only company out there with at-home test?
Some of the other companies that got, authorizations, recently include, the Quidel QuickView at-home test, as well as the BD Veritor Plus system, was authorized for point-of-care screening without a prescription as well. So we're definitely getting like a lot more tests that are like a lot more readily available.
Excellent. Great news.
Yeah, awesome news.
Well, this is a great lead-in for our closing keynote conversation. I had a chance to speak with Lisa Earnhardt, the Executive Vice President of Medical Devices at Abbott. She's not in charge of the diagnostic tests, but we had a far-ranging conversation, including a question about robotics and digital surgery that we'll get into right now. Well, Lisa Earnhardt, welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Lisa, you would have no way of remembering this, but you were my first guest on my first MedTech podcast. And that interview we published 6 years ago, almost to this day. We're talking in mid-March. So it's great to have you back. A lot has changed.
A lot has changed over 6 years, and certainly this past year. And it's an exciting time, obviously, to be in MedTech, and looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, no, this past year has seemed much longer than that. So let's speak to that first. I do want to get into your path into medtech, but I'd ask this question of others. So many of you have gone into the medtech industry for the explicit purpose of creating technology that helps people. So it's already in your blood. But this past year has really been an opportunity for the medtech sector to step up. And Abbott, and specifically, while I know you're not in charge of the diagnostics tests, Abbott has been at the forefront, coming up with solutions and tests and ways of sort of helping us move forward as a society. As just an employee at Abbott, seeing your workplace up in the headlines day after day, week after week, what did that feel like for you?
Yeah, and I would echo your comments in terms of this year has been like no other, and it certainly showed us all what we're made of. And I mean, both individually, as companies, and certainly as an industry, I would say I've been quite proud to be part of the medtech industry, and I think we really did step up to all the challenges. And certainly at Abbott, we did, right? So we were really built for this. So I would think it was a very proud moment for all of us this past year. It's really not a moment, but it's a whole year of just a tremendous pride in terms of the contributions we've made during the pandemic. And while our diagnostic teammates really led the way there, I think we all really stepped up and worked collaboratively across the board to make an impact. Obviously, the diagnostic is what has gotten the most play. I think we have nearly about 12 or dozen or so tests out there. Really, the goal was having a suite of testing to make sure we had the right test in the right place at the right time. And we certainly have been moving in a light speed. And so I think tremendous pride, really amazing in terms of how resilient we've been as a company, but also how quickly we've been able to move in a time of crisis. And that's been really encouraging. I mean, you don't think of a 100,000 person organization who's been around for 130 years able to really turn on a dime and come forth with such real breakthrough innovation in such a short amount of time. So it's really, as I said, just to recap, I think it's just tremendous pride amongst the employees of Abbott, and proud to be part of the team.
That's great. Just to follow up, I want to sort of get a sense in working over this past year. I'm wondering how life has been different. I mean, you're moving forward, and obviously it's a pandemic and such. We're all working from home. We're all working through Zoom, but at a medtech company, you already have sort of an immediacy of getting things through clinical trials, getting things on the market, getting products to patients. I wonder, how has your job or your feelings about your job changed day to day? How has working at Abbott and in the medtech industry more broadly change with all of this? Is it you're still pursuing the same goals, but how is it different?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously still focused on helping people live their best lives through technology, but the intensity in which we've done that. I mean, I think about the early days when we were learning about the pandemic early in 2020 and literally on calls every day. I mean, probably on calls every day for several months, just trying to make decisions, to prioritize, to make sure we were keeping our employees safe, to making some tough decisions early on in terms of how we were going to respond as Abbott. So I would say the intensity definitely has increased over the past year, and it continues to, right? Because it is a dynamic time. And I look at that, and where there's change is opportunity. And I think one of the most exciting things is I think there's a lot of good that will come from COVID. It's hard to think that right now, but I do see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think there's a lot of great things in terms of how we can apply technology to really transform care moving forward. So I think all the intensity, all the stress, all the hard work, just incredibly proud of my team, continue to moving everything forward on the innovation side and supporting our customers. But I think all of that will translate to really good things in the future.
Oh, that's great. And just to follow the final question on this, and I do want to later on ask about specific technologies and remote tech, and you have a cool VR platform that I want to talk about. But in talking again about how COVID impacted the company, looking at the annual report, your device businesses seem to take a hit from 2019 to 2020, like many device companies have for obvious reasons. Wondering what the lasting impact on Abbott Medical Devices will be from this pandemic, not only from not from a financial point of view, but more operationally. What changes did you make to cope with this, and how different might this business look than it did in January 2020?
Yeah, and as I think it was a tough year, no question about it, for lots of reasons, and in particular in med tech. But I do think COVID really accelerated the future and has us really keenly focused on areas that we knew were coming down the pike. We've seen it coming from time in terms of sort of the digitalization of healthcare, ensuring patients and people have access to technology around the world. And I think that's one thing COVID did, is sort of unleash the need for that in a huge way. And so I think as a med tech business, it's really brought that much more into focus in terms of how do we develop connected devices? How do we transform care through things like wireless implants, wearable sensors, leveraging mobile platforms, really meeting people where they are for their care? So I think about this as probably more in terms of strategic direction. It's pulled things in, right? There's things that we thought we would do 3, 5, 10 years from now that we actually started working on this last year because the world changed so much in such a fast, amount of time. And I think that's actually really, really good for us at Abbott. It's actually really good for us as an industry.
Well, that's great. And just in terms of employees themselves, how you're working, do you see any difference in what the company?
Oh, yeah. I think in terms of like operationally how it will work, I think the value of flexibility and ensuring that, that employees can take advantage of that. I think we found that we were able to be very successful at continuing to move the pipeline forward, continue our clinical trials, working on everything we do to add value in healthcare. And for the most part, a lot of our employees did that remotely, right? And so I think we've proven that we've been able to do that. We think about sort of returning to the office, it will look different. Great.
Well, let's go back to my unusual beginning with the podcast. And I just want to sort of understand your story as to how you got into medtech. What was your entry point?
Yeah, I was an engineer undergraduate, and out of school, I went into management consulting, but in the healthcare world. So I loved mostly working with hospitals, healthcare providers, thinking about how they could be more efficient, deliver better patient care. And when I went back to business school, I'm like, I'm kind of done with healthcare. It takes forever to get things done. There's so many stakeholders, and I always loved technology, and I kind of gravitated back to my engineering world and did an internship at Dell Computer. And a big part of that was it moves fast and it's cool and cutting edge, and I want to be part of that world. And then at the end of the summer, I was like, you know what? I'm not sure I'm making the kind of impact on the world. It sounds kind of grandiose, but it's kind of sometimes how I think that sort of impact I want to make in terms of my work, right? And that's where MedTech came in. It was like the perfect combination, combining two of my passions, healthcare and technology, and really able to do both of those. So out of business school, I started with Guidant and have been in healthcare ever since. In fact, I think it's been almost 25 years since I started in the industry.
That's fantastic. And you were, in the guiding group out in the Silicon Valley in the Bay Area. Are you still there? It's
interesting because out of school, I actually was up in the Twin Cities. I lived in a bunch of different locations and ended up back out here. And I say back because I went to school out this way. But yeah, it's ironic because I am in my office right now, and it's actually the same building that I used to work in with Guidant. So I'm literally like probably 100 feet from my old office, but in a very different job. Abbott is a very different company. I mean, gosh, when I worked here at Guidant, Abbott really wasn't in medtech. And as I think about how Abbott has really transformed with the spin out of AbbVie and with the acquisition of St. Jude, it's really transformed to be a leader in technology. And it's kind of fun to come full circle to literally be coming into work in the same building I worked in 20 some odd years ago.
That's amazing. So speaking to your point about medtech being cool, I wonder, I was going to say at your barbecues and cocktail parties, but we're not having those very much. But in going forward, as you tell people you're in the medtech industry in an area that is dominated obviously by tech, do you think medtech's cachet has increased at all from the pandemic? Do you think that you'll have an easier time perhaps competing with Google or an Amazon for the top engineering talent? What's the long-term impact there?
Yeah, I think it's once again a net positive for the medtech industry because it's really raised the awareness of healthcare. And what we see really more now than ever is people really want more control of their health. They're much more aware. They're much more interested. It's really good for medtech in terms of recruiting talent because I think we're a smaller industry than technology, but I think people recognize there's a burning need to be doing things different in healthcare, and medtech is a great way to make a difference by leveraging technology to help people, in particular with chronic conditions, lead better lives. So I'm excited. Once again, I'm always looking for the glass half full. What are the good things that have come out of COVID? And there certainly are some. And I think the role that medtech played within and during the pandemic certainly raised our visibility. And then I think it also just raised the importance of healthcare, where typically maybe people didn't think about healthcare in terms of they were later in their years. I think people all really want to sort of own their healthcare much earlier and with much greater control than they had historically, and also have wanted to get treatment outside of the four walls of the hospital, which I think has been an important trend coming out of COVID that I think will impact how we approach our work in the industry.
And just final question about yourself. When we had talked previously on the podcast, you were the CEO of a startup that had just gone public when we first talked. And then I think we talked again, and you obviously were a more mature publicly traded company. You swapped the CEO role at a smaller company for a larger position at Abbott. What was that transition like, and what led you to that change?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things. I obviously was so proud of the work we did at Intersect, but as I was sort of thinking of my next phase of my career, really thinking through how could I have even greater impact. So one of the things that attracted me to Abbott was sort of our focus on some of the most costly, debilitating chronic conditions, such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, chronic pain, movement disorders. And those are all areas, for the most part, I had spent time in and had a lot of passion for. And Abbott really allowed me the opportunity to make an impact at scale. And I also think coming from the startup world, there's so much focus on innovation. And that's one of the things I recognized at Abbott as a 130-year-old company. They obviously have and we now obviously have had we figured out how to innovate and how to change and transform. And to be part of that was really attractive to me. And so I really felt like it was such a great opportunity to lead at scale, to have an impact. The St. Jude acquisition had been done a couple of years before I started, and I was convinced that we had the right products, we had the right pipeline, and really the right people to become a leader.
Let's walk through the portfolio a bit. I mean, it is broad. You've got rhythm management, electrophysiology, heart failure, vascular, structural heart, neuromod and diabetes care. We'll start at the bottom because you've had a lot of success. That's actually the one business that has finished stronger in 2020. I'm guessing it's due to the Freestyle Libre.
Yeah, Libre has been a real breakthrough. I mean, it really frees people from sort of the pain and hassles of finger sticks. It enables people to manage their glucose levels really seamlessly and allows them to live the lives they want to lead without having this be such a burden. So really having that sort of real-time information that's available on their phone wherever they are has really been a breakthrough. And we're really just scratching the surface in terms of the adoption of continuous glucose monitors. And I'm proud that we're really leading the way as Abbott with Libre.
That's terrific. And I see that I'm just going through some of the headlines in the diabetes space that Abbott's also working with the American Diabetes Association to work on a Health Equity Now platform to address health disparities for people living with diabetes. That's the last years in particular, for many reasons, healthcare inequity has become a huge issue. How important was that program to you?
Yeah, I would say as Abbott, expanding access and really eliminating barriers to health has been a core part of our strategy. And COVID just sort of highlighted that need. And so the sponsorship we have with ADA is really all about expanding access to diabetes technologies, sort of tackling all the barriers that prevent access. So as I think about Libre, it really goes back to how we started the development of that product, which was, hey, diabetes technologies was really in its infancy. It was pretty complex, hard to use, didn't really fit into people's lives. And so the sort of the fundamental design goal for Libre really was to make it actually like Fisher-Price-like. And you remember Fisher-Price toys, like easy to use. Anyone can do it. It doesn't take a technologist or a lot of expertise to be able to fit it into your life. And so both in terms of the technology and its ease of use, how we priced it, it's the lowest price CGM on the market. Very intentionally, we have one global price. And so that's a very different approach than historically has been taken in the medtech space. So I think having that, it's been core to our strategy long term. And so the partnership with the American Diabetes Association is really taking it that next step and ensuring that the masses could really benefit from diabetes, which is really an epidemic, both here stateside and around the globe. So we're really fortunate to be partnering with them on that and glad to have like-minded individuals who are really focused on ensuring access and breaking down the barriers. So it's not easy to do in healthcare, but we're incredibly committed to the effort and the cause. That's core to our strategy at Abbott.
That's great. Let's circle back to the earlier part of our conversation. We talked about programs that may have been accelerated by COVID. In March, we reported that the FDA approved neuromodulation platform that allowed for better communication with patients and physicians, so patients could monitor their or alter their chronic pain treatment remotely. The Neurosphere Virtual Clinic. Is that something that has been? I mean, it seems like it's certainly perfect for the time to
that is such a great example, Tom, of a program that we accelerated. So I think that was on our product map for like 2025 or something as we were kicking off the year. And we would sit back and just think, imagine a world where someone with chronic pain or Parkinson's disease was at home. They didn't have a physician appointment for a couple of months, but they needed help. But think about the time that they may be 150 miles away, right, from their physician, which is really the case in particular for Parkinson's patients where there's really centers of excellence. So instead of having to get in the car, drive, park, go into the clinic, get your device reprogrammed, we really had this vision of being able to sort of meet the patient where they are when they need it. And that's exactly what the virtual care platform has enabled. So we're in the early stage of launching there, but you can connect with your physician through a secure portal, and they're actually able to program your device remotely and provide you, in the case of pain relief, provide you symptom relief right there and then without having to leave your home. So that was sort of a vision we had
Mm-hmm.
Longer term, we didn't think the world was quite ready for that. Like, who thinks about getting healthcare at home?
Right.
Like, that just wasn't how we were viewing that as a society. But what we were able to do was really push the accelerator on that. I'm so proud of the neuromodulation team because they stepped up. It's breakthrough. It's the first system of its kind that enables this type of remote programming, and really excited about the potential for this platform, not just for neuromodulation, but obviously as we think about our other connected devices and the potential we're going to be able to bring forth to meet people where they are.
What is the process for deciding where and when to push on the gas pedal? Did you go through your whole portfolio and sort of identify things that might be more necessary in a kind of new world order? What was the process like?
Yeah, the team's they're very much empowered here. We run as separate, fully accountable businesses within Abbott. But I think early on, my leadership team really started thinking about, hey, what are areas that we can make a difference in the pandemic? And we think this is going to be lasting. So it wasn't just hey, let's try to step in and meet an acute need. It was the world is changing. The acceleration of telehealth is a good thing for healthcare. I mean, it's one of the few things that's a win for the patient because they can get care when and where they want it. It's a win for the physician because they can drive efficiency in their practice and really deliver better patient outcomes. And then it's a win for the healthcare system. So you don't have too many things like that. And so we did sort of look, my leaders did a fantastic job looking across the portfolio. And there's some other areas that we were able to accelerate and put more focus on. CardioMEMS is one of those areas. That's a implantable pressure monitor for people with heart failure. And in that case, it allows physicians to remotely monitor changes in pulmonary artery pressure. And they can predict when patients might decompensate and develop symptoms. And so instead of waiting for a patient to present to the ER, which unfortunately is an often point of entry for these patients, they're actually able to adjust their meds from the comfort of their own home, adjust their treatment. It reduces hospitalization. It's exactly the kind of technology and exactly the kind of changes we need to make in healthcare to help keep people out of hospitals, to keep them healthy, and to use predictive analytics to do that. So those are the kinds of things that we were always working on at Abbott. This is not something that's new. It hasn't been new for us, hasn't been new for the industry, but I think we were able to really react pretty quickly and said, we need to go, and we need to go now on this because the world's going to look very differently. I mean, I don't think we knew exactly how it would look. I certainly don't think we'd be here a year later and would still be in the midst of the pandemic, but I do see the light at the end of the tunnel, at least here stateside. But it's going to be changing to healthcare, and once again, I think it's a good thing.
And also looking at, you have a new VR training program for interventional cardiologists. Is that something else that had been accelerated because of COVID?
Yeah. And so once again, as we think about training, as we think about case support and proctoring, these were all things as we thought about how can we reduce barriers to adoption of technology, especially globally. Right? Because we don't have people all over who are experienced, who can support cases. We don't have physicians, experts in every market around the globe. But what COVID did is say, hey, we need to work more quickly on that. So it really has changed the way that we engage and support our customers. And I think training and case support is a great example, whether that be some of the work we're doing with augmented reality, whether it be utilizing sort of remote procedure guidance for all different kinds of procedures. But many of our procedures do require case support or proctoring either by my team or by other trained and expert physicians. And so to be able to do that, have an expert physician from, let's say, Boston, telepresence and leverage some of the great technology out there. And we actually did this in, I think it was India, where we did some of our first cases with MitraClip, which is our transcatheter structural heart for people with structural heart device for people with leaky mitral valves. We actually did some of our first cases leveraging remote proctoring capability. So it really showed us the potential in, once again, like it's a silver lining of it all, is those are all things we were working on, because a lot of our procedures require sort of expert training and inpatient education. But all the obstacles last year in terms of travel restrictions and everything that went along with that has really reduced some barriers by leveraging technology. So once again, lots of exciting things that are coming out of this that we always knew were good ideas, but the sense of urgency around them really had us and also our customers embrace these cutting edge technologies.
That's terrific. Well, we're looking forward. We could spend an hour going over the rest of your portfolio, but I know you have to go. What do you have looking forward for the rest of the year for Abbott as we get back into a more normal? What do you see as being some big developments for Abbott coming up?
Yeah, we have a number of key product launches this year. We had some major ones last year between Libre 2, our next generation MitraClip device, and a number of important new structural heart devices in Europe, and the other ones were all in the US. We also have just recently launched a Bluetooth-enabled defibrillator called the Gallant product. So we really across the board in each one of my franchises have a number of important product launches this year, which will continue to accelerate over the years to come. As I said, we did not lose a lot of ground last year, despite all the challenges from the pandemic. So I'm really looking to the cadence of products. I'm really looking to becoming even more relevant to our customers, whether that be the people who use our devices, the physicians, or the patients who benefit from them through some of our connected devices and systems. We're really wanting to make technology an extender of their life and a core to who they are and how they manage their health. So lots of exciting things ahead from Abbott, and not just obviously medical devices, but that's near and dear to my heart, as you know.
And finally, just a quick question. We've just been talking with everyone else about digital surgery. How do you see Abbott representing that play, and is there a need for a robotics program there?
We're always looking at innovation across the board, right? Mm-hmm. And robotics is an interesting area. Unlike other large sort of multinational companies where they're more heavily focused in traditional surgery, which robotics have had a larger role, we're obviously really focused on chronic disease management. Right. So that's a little bit more. And so I think our focus has been and will continue to be really moving outside the four walls of the hospital and thinking about chronic disease management and how do we help the patient every step of the way in terms of their disease progression and making sure we have a solution. So I think digital surgery is just one very small piece of the overall equation. It's really putting sort of digital health solutions and surrounding our technology. I like to think about it as like moving beyond the device. Because oftentimes we talk about our devices, right? We're very device centric. That's what we are as a med tech industry. And I'm trying to help us think through is how do we move beyond the device and really embrace the positive changes that have been accelerated because of COVID. And so you'll see a lot of our new products and our services and support in that area.
Excellent. Well, it's a very important work, and I don't want to keep you from it any longer. So thanks for your time today, Lisa. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Yep, and thanks for all that you do on behalf of MedTech. We're happy to have you in the field.
I appreciate that. All right, well, it was great having Lisa Earnhardt on the podcast. Chris Newmarker, you know what time it is.
How do you reach me? Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker, and I'm on Twitter at Newmarker. So always happy to catch up with people. And they can find us on Clubhouse next Wednesday, right? Not Monday, Wednesday. We're doing Wednesday now.
Wednesday, 1:00 Eastern, Device Talks Weekly, live. Yeah. Well, we had a great conversation with Megan Ziemba and Clancy Amati from PhotoFab the other day. We talked about manufacturing a bit. But actually, what's great about Clubhouse is the conversation can go where it goes. And we ended up talking mostly about women in manufacturing and women in engineering and women in the workforce. So it was a really interesting conversation. But definitely going to try to line up some guests for next week as well. So it's a great opportunity. If you're on Clubhouse, please join us at 1 p.m. on Wednesday. You can find Chris and myself there.
1 p.m. Eastern time. 1 p.m. Eastern.
1 p.m. Eastern.
Right.
I am on Twitter at MedTechTom. I am on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi. Please connect with us there. It's always great to hear from folks. And it would be great if everyone would subscribe to this podcast As I mentioned, every week we've got hundreds of people listening to this podcast before we even push it out through our massive and powerful social media channels. So it means they're subscribed. You should subscribe as well. Do it. Just push the subscribe button. It's simple, it's easy, and you'll get the podcast sent right to you.
Follow, subscribe, like.
Exactly. Also, do follow our all of our social media channels for Mass Device. Medical is not an outsourcing. Device Talks. We have a great social media team that's pumping out some very cool stuff. So make sure you look for us out there. And finally, please don't forget to tell your friends about this podcast. If you enjoyed yourself, let folks know that you're listening to the Device Talks weekly podcast. And tune in next week. We'll have another great episode waiting for you.
Stay safe. Get vaccinated soon.
Rubbing it in. I get it.
Sorry, man.